Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to get a job and how to interview. So what we're going to cover is just interviewing during these times that we're at right now. What do you need to know about getting a job in this world? How do we navigate that? And also just some different tips and tricks for interviewing. And also while you're waiting for a job, what you might do while you're waiting right now, okay? So the first thing is you want to know the video platform that you're using. So a lot of people now are using Zoom. There's all different things out there. What you want to be able to do is test it ahead of time, can be really helpful. So make sure you go ahead and test that out. Also, you want to make sure that you minimize any distractions in your environment. I know these days there can be many things you're competing with. There can be children running around in the background, children sitting on your lap. You might have dogs and cats running around, other people in the household. So just making sure that you're in a place where you can professionally be present and not worry about those distractions. Okay, also looking at the camera. That might sound kind of obvious, but oftentimes we can get distracted when we're on these, virtual interviews, which is something we're doing a lot these days. And you might get caught up, looking at yourself. But the best thing you can do is look right at the camera at the top of your screen. So even if you have to put a Post-it note or something to remind yourself, you want to be sure that you go ahead and do that. Dressing completely. And yes, I do mean sometimes we might be wearing our pajama pants, we might be wearing our yoga pants, different things like that. But if you're in an interview, you want to make sure that you feel 100% professional. So going that extra mile, even if it's just psychologically to feel put together, maybe even put on, some shoes instead of your slippers, things like that, just dressing fully and completely and professionally, right? Some other things you might want to think of right now is thinking about asking the company, how are they handling, the COVID crisis? Are there some things that you need to be mindful of going into if you were to work at this company? Okay, so don't be afraid to address the current situation and ask those maybe awkward questions in some ways, because you don't want to disregard what is going on in the world. All right, so some different tips and tricks for interviewing. The first one is just being an attractive candidate from the get-go, and that starts from the very beginning. So making sure that you have a professional voicemail set up. I know when I was a recruiter, sometimes I would call people's voicemails and there was like a rap song going on in the background, and it was like, they were rapping, like, leave a message. And, you just want to be extremely professional. Not like there's anything wrong with rapping, but you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in that correct light. And also phone etiquette. Your phone can ring at any point, right? You could be running, doing a Target run or something like that. You want to make sure if you're picking up your phone, you're in a position where you're able to speak in that moment. So make sure you're not driving in your car, you're in the middle of running an errand. If not, just let it go to voicemail. When you do pick up that phone, sometimes even just saying something professional, hi, this is Melissa, right? Addressing them in that way. Another thing is your social media. I think we all know these days the importance of having a clean social media. A lot of employers do Google. I forget the exact percentage, but I think it might even be like 80% of employers Google you. So do a Google search on yourself. You might be surprised at what pops up. When in doubt, make it private. Unless it's something you want to show off, like a LinkedIn page, or if you're a graphic designer and you've got some stuff you're showing off on Pinterest or Instagram. Okay, so just being mindful of what is being shown there. So research. There's a lot of different things that you want to research. The first one is just knowing yourself. I know that sounds kind of silly, but I know at the Career Development Office here, we've got a tool called Type Focus. All right, and being able to figure out which one of the 16 personality types you have, and being able to get the language to speak to that. So when you're meeting with an employer, you can say, oh, I am an ENFJ, and that means that I'm very good with creating relationships and meeting with people and giving them what they need, blah, blah, blah. All right, so being able to have the language to do that. Also, researching your field. That might be something you may or may not have thought of. what is going on in your fields of interest right now? What are the hot topics? These are things that you can weave throughout your interview, and it just helps you understand what you might need to read up on and get ready for. Also, the organization. When you go to these interviews, really get to know that organization. What can you research? We've got the internet at our fingertips, right? What are other employees, former employees saying about them? You can go to things like salary.com or Glassdoor and get different reviews. Knowing the position, okay? You can even take notes ahead of time, so when you are in those interviews, glance down at the job description. That's going to be your Bible, okay? Whatever their qualities you're looking for, you want to make sure that you can portray that and let them know that you have those qualities, hopefully. And also, if there's any way you can find out who you are meeting with, I've done that before for interviews. I'll say, who will be in the room interviewing me? If you can get their name and even the position that they're in, that will help you be able to speak to different things that might be of importance to them. Okay, so when you're on your interview, what are some questions they might say? Usually they ask you something like, tell me about yourself. Okay, that can sound a little bit scary. Where do you go from there? What they're looking for is basically about 30 seconds where you talk about, here's my past educational history. Here's my past work experience. Maybe a few stories weaved in there that what brought you here today and where you're looking to go in your career. All right, these are some things that us at the Career Development Center can help you work with, but you should be able to answer that question. Tell me a little bit about yourself, okay? You can get a little bit deeper than just your work history. Let them know who you are as a person. They're looking for about 30 seconds. A lot of times they'll ask you some version of, tell me about your strengths. Okay, so what are some things that you are really good at? If you were to get a review from your past supervisor, what would they say is one thing that you really contributed to your team? What do you do well? These are things you want to think about and practice saying verbally, because sometimes it can be different in your head than how it comes out. So practice. Also, your weaknesses. Usually they'll ask you, what is your weakness, or what is something you want to improve? So here's the thing about this one. The trick here is you don't want it to be a true weakness. You want it to be something that you're kind of working on, but it might not be super negative. So sometimes examples of this is, oh, I'm working on being able to delegate better. I like to keep a lot of things for myself. Sometimes I care too much and I have to, maybe that's a bad example, but there's different resources that you can use. There's something called Big Interview, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and they'll give you different examples of things that you can use for your strengths and your weaknesses that might jog your memory. Behavioral interview questions. These are things like, tell me about a time when you had a difficult customer. Tell me about a time when you had a conflict. All right, what they're looking for is, how do you handle those situations? As an interviewer, sometimes that's the best way to get to know someone. What would you do in this situation? So think back to your past experience. If you haven't had a job that had that exact situation, think about how you would handle it and give more details, right? Sometimes people just answer questions with like a one-line response. Don't be afraid to go on a little bit further. If you're able to see the people that helps, you can tell when they've kind of heard enough. And you can even say, do you want me to say a little bit more? Okay, you just don't want to be like rambling on too much. And also they might ask you, how do you stand out? What makes you the best candidate out of everyone we're interviewing? So again, thinking about your strengths, and maybe it's as simple as your passion. I have a real passion for this type of work, or to work for this type of company. Anything you can do to pat that organization on the back will go a long way. All right, so questions for the employer. Usually at the end of the interview, they'll ask you if you have any questions for them. They are paying attention to what you ask, okay? You never want to say, I don't have any questions. You always want to be thirsty for knowledge, right? You want to learn more. So some examples of questions you can ask are things like, tell me about what an average day is like. Maybe that question was never answered in the interview. Something I've always liked to ask, and I also worked in HR, was I was always curious about their retention rate. So how do people stay here for a while? If they are leaving, what are the reasons they're leaving? That can give you some insight into, is this a place you want to work? Is this a place I could stick around? Are people generally happy here? I also really like asking questions like, what do you like most about working here, right? Get a little personal, or what are some challenges you find in this role? Or what are some challenges you think I might come up against? You know, what is some advice you can give to someone just starting out in this field? All right. So think about it ahead of time. Again, you can have a notepad and write these questions down ahead of time. Don't be afraid to ask for clarity on questions. Sometimes the employer might ask you something and you just don't understand what they're asking. It's okay to admit that. You can say, I think this is what you're asking. Is this correct? Or say, do you mind just repeating that? Or I didn't hear you, or maybe repeating that in a different way. You want to make sure, or you can even say, did I answer that the way you were, what you were looking for? Did I answer your question? Sometimes you might get stumped and you're just not sure what to say. You can always say, that's a really good question. Let me think about that. Or can I get back to you on that? But the best you can, try to answer it in the moment. Some other things to be thinking about is your body language, okay? So whether it's a virtual interview or an in-person interview, you want to make sure that you've got good posture, right? You're standing up tall. You want to try not to have your arms crossed, because that shows that your body is kind of like closed off. You want to look friendly, you want to look pleasant. It's okay to smile. And also your speech. Sometimes when people are nervous, they'll talk very fast or they'll talk very slow. So just be careful about that. Pay attention to that. And also trying to mirror your interviewer. So if your interviewer is like very fast-paced and energetic, okay, obviously you're not going to totally change your personality, but you want to kind of step it up a little bit and show like, I'm on it today. I'm awake. Okay, I'm here. If the person you're interviewing is a little more laid back, maybe you don't want to be so type A. Okay, so just kind of notice who you're meeting with, kind of find that chemistry, because not only are they looking for someone who has the skills, they're looking for someone who can fit into that company culture too. Okay, it's kind of like dating. All right, you want to make sure that there is you fit in, and there's some chemistry there and you're not driving them crazy. All right. I also wanted to mention, this is kind of a hot topic these days. It's called the top 7 career competencies. And anyone who's interested, I can actually we have a good handout for this. I can send as a follow-up. So if you put your information in the chat, I can get this to you. But so what they did is they interviewed employers, and these are things that employers are looking for these days. Okay, this is hot information right off the press. The number one thing employers are looking for is critical thinking. Okay, so what are some ways you can talk about how you have the critical thinking skills? Maybe you've done some capstone projects in school. Maybe you've done some research. What are some writing samples? What are some reports or case studies you've done? All right, showing that you have these skills in the interview is going to be really helpful. Communication, right? Whether it's in writing, whether it's verbally, you've probably delivered some presentations, written some papers. These are skills that they want to see. Different public speaking engagements. Social media is very big right now. Any experience you might have professionally with social media, but personally it might not hurt too, just to say that, oh yeah, I am familiar with the platform. I do use Instagram. I do use Twitter. That can help you out. Teamwork is huge, right? We do some of that in college. We do some of that in the working world. So any sort of group projects or even clubs or activities that you've belonged to, these just show that you've got that teamwork. Also IT, you want to show that you are comfortable with different platforms. Things are changing really quickly these days. So showing that you're not afraid to try out some new technology. And if you have trouble with it, putting the the extra effort in. People want to see that you can kind of go with the flow with technology. Obviously, leadership, different clubs, different projects that you've belonged to. And then also just your work ethic, are you involved in things outside of just taking classes? Okay, and then also career management. So just presenting your own personal brand, right? Who are you? Have you done anything on your own? Are you an entrepreneur? These are just some things you want to keep in mind. All right, so while you are waiting for a job, because you might not find a job tomorrow, hopefully you do, but you might not, this is a very good time in the meantime to continue to network. I know networking can be kind of a scary word for a lot of us, but it can be as simple as connecting with your family, connecting with your friends, people you worked out at the ice cream shop last summer. Do they know somebody? LinkedIn's a really great tool. I can't say enough great things about LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, you want to get on there. It's kind of like the Facebook for professionals. You can connect with alum, okay? You can look up RIC Alum. RIC Alum are always willing to help you out. That's something you might want to check out. The industry that you're looking to get into, or someone with your dream job that you eventually want, connect with them. The worst they can say is no, right? But see if maybe you have a couple questions for them. Maybe they're willing to have an informational interview with you. An informational interview is when you've got questions prepared for them. How did you get to where you are in your field? What advice do you have for me today? I also have some good resources for questions you can ask for informational interviews. And sometimes when you're networking in these ways, it can lead to future jobs, okay? Even if it's years down the line, it could eventually lead there. Another thing you can think about while you're looking for a job is upskilling, okay? I think all of you on this call have your degree now, congrats. So what you can do is continue to build those skills. It's a lifelong thing. Just because you have that degree in your hand, learning never stops in some ways. So there's some places here that have free, free resources where you can continue to gain different skills. Harvard is offering free courses right now. I don't know how to say it, Coursera, Coursera, and even Verizon. I got an email the other day from Verizon saying we've got free, professional development trainings for different things. These are just a few examples of things that you can add to your resume, and it just helps your knowledge, right? So keep learning, okay? Don't get stagnant there. Gigs. This is a word that is being thrown around much more. If you're having trouble finding a job, you might want to entertain the idea of a gig. So what is a gig? A gig is a project. So someone hires you, for example, to build a website for my new business. It might be 3 or 4 weeks of work. It's a gig. You get paid a set amount once it's done. There's a website for this, and at the end of this presentation, you'll see the links to these things that I'm referencing. If you're having trouble looking for a job, check that out, because maybe it can bring some income. It also builds your resume in the meantime. Staffing agencies. I have always kind of been a fan of staffing agencies. If you're looking for work and you're having trouble, staffing agencies have a lot of employer connections, right? They know a lot of different companies. Sometimes their interest is to fit people into the job. So you just want to make sure that they have your best interest in mind, where you're going to fit in. But if you go to a staffing agency and say, here's my resume, here's the work I'm trying to do, they can kind of do some of that work for you and try to find you a place. Usually they don't charge. I think they shouldn't charge. You want to go to a place where they're not charging you. They actually charge the employer to find someone for them. So that can kind of open up your network a little bit. Also, while you're looking for full-time work, consider part-time work, okay? Even if you're looking for full-time, some work is better than no work. And it's something you can continue to get experience with. So these are just some other alternatives to keep in mind. So here are the resources I mentioned. This is a really great website, Who is Still Hiring? So if you go on this website here, this is updated in real time, moment to moment. Every company you can imagine, are they hiring right now? Okay, so you can kind of put it in the search bar and see, is there a hiring freeze or are they hiring? So if you have an idea of some companies you might want to work at, this is a good place to go and check out. All right. You also want to check out Handshake, our job portal. That should be your first stop shop for looking for jobs, because these are employers that are coming that are looking to hire RIC grads. All right. So here is that gigs website that I mentioned. There's different various projects and things that you can sign up for there. Handshake, which I just mentioned. You can even do a search in there to look for our employer partners. These are people, organizations that we work very closely with. So even if they don't have a job posted right now, you can look and see who are our employer partners and connect with them. LinkedIn, this is a nice place to be where you can, again, like I mentioned, connect with RIC alum. You can put your profile up there. This is more robust than a resume, because you can say more in your LinkedIn profile. You can give more examples. You can even connect it to, work that you've done that might be hanging out on the internet somewhere. Put some links in there. Big Interview. This is a really cool thing that RIC subscribes to, where it can help you with your interview skills. So I wish we had more time today where I could dive into different interview questions. We touched on the big ones today, but you definitely want to check out this link here because they have like every interview question that could ever get thrown on you that you can imagine. And it tells you how to answer them. It tells you different examples you might want to give and what the employer is looking for. So take some time and poke around there. There's even a tool where you can answer an interview question and upload your answer in a video format, and someone will critique it for you. So like I mentioned, sometimes it's more than just having the answer in your mind, it's practicing saying it out loud. So this is a platform that you can use for that. At the Career Development Center, we can also set up mock interviews with you guys. This is good forever, even if you come back, 10 years from now. If you need practice interviewing, I definitely recommend taking advantage of that and fine-tuning. It's more than just your answers, right? It's also how you present yourself. It's your confidence level. It's the questions that you ask. There's a lot of things that go into it. And then lastly, another good resource is next week at RIC, we have our virtual job fairs. So if you want to know more about this, you can just go onto Handshake and there's an event tab. You can click into the job fairs and it tells you about how to get on this platform. It's called Know.Careers. And the way it works is you upload your resume. You can also upload a 30-second video that tells them about who you are, which I definitely recommend doing. Not enough people do it. And I think it really makes you stand out in a different way. And you might even get more interest from employers. If the employer likes you, they'll send you 5 interview questions and you respond by uploading a video to each answer. All right, so there's 4 of those going on next week. Tuesday is healthcare fair. Wednesday is the public service fair. Thursday is the education fair. And then Friday is the business fair. So you'll definitely want to check that out as well. So let's see how we're doing on time here. It's 12:23. I know we have a few more minutes here. So who's on this call? How many are here, Emily? Do you know?
We have 3 students on the call.
Oh, hello, 3 students on the call.
Or not students anymore, alumni.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so used to dealing with students. Alumni, that is right. I'm so happy and congratulations to you guys. Congrats, alum.
So yeah, we're happy you're here. So if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself, or if you're more comfortable just putting it in the chat feature, we can wait a minute or two. Very similar to the spiels I've given earlier this week. The Alumni Association is here for you during this time, not only to provide you with resources like webinars from the Career Development Center, but also opportunities across the board in terms of discounts, services, connections, networks, all of the above. So if you have any questions, I know I've been communicating with you all through the alumni@ric.edu email account. You can still reach out through that. I can answer any questions. I can also send you this presentation following up and Melissa's information if you have any additional questions that you don't want to ask right now on the webinar.
Here's some contact info I just put up on the screen too. Feel free to take a screenshot or a picture. Feel free to email us, the main Career Development Center. You can even email myself, mcarvalho@ric.edu. But keep in close contact with us. We can definitely help you guys.
Yeah, just as a reminder, even though you're alumni now, that doesn't mean that your engagement with the Career Development Center ends because you're no longer a student. We want to make sure that resources like Handshake and Big Interview and some of these other assets that the Career Development Center brings to the table are things that you can still access 5, 10, 15 years out as part of our alumni community. Melissa is actually one of our alumni, and so knowing that she is here and she's been in your shoes before is a great resource as well.
Absolutely, and I know you guys have questions. I know you do. I know you want to say, how do I answer this question? Or what do I do because I didn't work for the last 4 years? I know you've got questions, so please, I can't wait to answer them.
So Ruth just reached out and asked if any of the companies through next week's virtual job fairs are related to technology for computer science majors. Melissa, I'm not sure if you know that question.
Ooh, I'm not sure if I can answer that completely off the top of my head. So you might have to just go in and check. If you log in again, if you go to Handshake and you go to the events tab, it'll tell you how to get into the Know.Careers app, and you can just look at all those companies. Here's the thing though with IT, I will say this. I know you might want to work for an IT company, but keep in mind that almost every company probably has some version of IT. So if I were you, I would attend honestly, I would probably attend at least the business fair, and you might even want to attend actually all of the fairs, because everyone's got technology, even the schools and the healthcare. So I would log in, attend every single fair, and connect with employers, let them know you're looking to do some sort of IT. Absolutely. So sorry, I can't give you any names off the top of my head, but there's definitely places you can connect with there.
Great question too.
Yeah, great question. Ask me more. I'm ready. Or let me pose this question to you guys. As you've gone on interviews in the past, what are some things that you wish you knew, or what do you have questions about? What are you nervous about? Or even if you have any questions about like the job search process in general, I can get pretty creative with finding jobs if you guys need help with that. Okay, well, I leave you guys, with this thought. I know it's kind of a crazy time to be looking for a job right now. Be patient with yourself. And sometimes it's a numbers game. You're not going to get the first job you apply to necessarily. If you do, you're really lucky. You might need to apply to 20 jobs before you get one employer who writes you back. You might need to apply to 50 jobs, but put the effort into each one. That's another thing I've seen as a recruiter and in HR. An employer can tell if you're sending the same resume, the same cover letter to every single place. If you can tailor it to the specific job and employer, you're really going to stand out. So putting in the effort to do that. And also being creative. If you can't find a full-time job right now, can you find a part-time job? Can you volunteer somewhere? Can you find a gig? There's different ways to show that you've been doing something with this time, even if it's taking some free professional development trainings. The employers are going to be curious, what have you been doing in this time if you're not in a job right now? So be able to answer that you are staying on top of things in that way.
Absolutely. And if, like we said, if you have any additional questions, I'm going to be following up with all of you in an email later on today, and I can definitely share with you the career development email again, and Melissa's direct email. So if you do have any more questions, especially about the upcoming virtual job fairs, please let us know. We'd love to be able to connect you and get all of your questions answered. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. And if you need anything, please reach out and let us know. Have a wonderful day.
Congrats, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.